Hello everyone, welcome to this special edition of the Belmont Journal, Belmont's own local program for hyperlocal news in community affairs programming. I'm your host, Roger Colton. I'm joined today by Franklin Tucker, the editor and publisher of the Belmontonian, Belmont's online source for hyperlocal news. Thanks for joining us today, Franklin.
Thank you.
The Belmontonian and the Belmont Journal are happy to bring you this special election edition of the Belmont Journal. It's election season. We don't have any contested races, but we are joined today by Adam Dash, who is running for re-election to the Select Board, and we're going to have a conversation with you even though you don't have an opponent. So,
well, thank you.
Thanks.
Longtime fan of the show and glad to be on it.
Let's start with a personal question. Let's jump right in and keep it moving, hopefully. What's it like to be on the Select Board? Is it what you expected it to be?
It is a little different than one would expect. It's a lot more intense, it's a lot more difficult, but it's very rewarding work. I should say it's one thing to sit in the audience and watch the Select Board and acting at the table, but it's a different thing to be behind the table with everyone looking at you and the cameras on, and the difficult issues and decisions coming in front of you one after the other. It's an interesting thing, and people stop you at the Star Market, and people call you on a Saturday because of a particular issue, but I enjoy it. It is very different than what you would think, though.
And my impression of being a member of the Select Board is you run from one meeting to the next. When do you actually get the work done? I mean, the work doesn't occur in the meetings, does it?
Sometimes. For instance, at the Select Board, with the open meeting law, we can't talk outside of the meetings, so all the work happens at the meetings, although we get packets in advance over the weekend, and I sit and review them over the weekend in preparation for a Monday Select Board meeting. But, I'm on the Capital Budget Committee, I have liaisons to the library trustees and other committees, and all the Select Board members sit on committees and are liaisons to other committees, and yeah, we do have to go to a lot of meetings, but I find it to be more of a privilege. I enjoy, being out there and talking to people, and that's what I ran for the office to do, to actually get some stuff done, and I appreciate the opportunity to do it.
Now, you've been on the Select Board for 3 years now.
Almost, yeah.
It seems as though there would be a tension between being a generalist and being a specialist, and you have to know something about everything. But then there are some issues that are really technical and that you need to specialize in. Do you have a reaction to that? There was a question in there somewhere.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. We do have advisory boards for that very issue. I mean, we have the Light Board Advisory Committee because some of those utility issues are extremely technical. The IT Advisory Committee because IT is extremely technical. I know enough about a computer, but I certainly don't know the details that you would need to know to make some of the decisions. So we have these advisory committees, and when Transportation Advisory Committee is another, and we get something which is very technical, like, for instance, having remote participation in town meetings, or the 5G array applications. We've sent those to the IT Advisory Committee to analyze them, and then they come back and issue a report or explain to us what their opinion is so that we're fully informed. So we know what we know, and we know what we don't know. I mean, I think we're fortunate that we have a good board, that we do have a lot of expertise in a lot of different areas.
You are finishing your first term,
yeah.
And so what have you learned about the town and residents since joining the board?
I've learned that we seems like the world's foremost expert in almost every category living in town. That never ceases to amaze me. When we have a meeting, someone will show up and be the expert on the topic, and you can check them out online, and they're absolutely correct that they are. I've also learned that people really, I think, care a lot about the town. I'm amazed that we have meetings on topics, and we will fill the room with residents. And I've talked to Select Board members in other towns, and they've said, how do you get people to show up in droves when you have a relatively mundane topic for a public discussion? I'm like, people in Belmont just show up, and they care. I wish I could take credit for promoting it or something, but I think it's just innate in the folks who are here. We put out the new committee appointment rules that I wrote to try to broaden the net for people to apply to be on town committees, and we've been inundated with applications, more diverse applications than we've ever had. The hard part is saying no to good people, but we only have X number of slots and Y number of applicants. You can't put them all on. But I think people are willing to step up. I've been extremely impressed with the level of outreach that people make to me much less what I make to them.
Have you ever run into a situation where you talk about people showing up, where there are groups of, or there are opposite opinions that are just at loggerheads, and somebody is clearly going to win and somebody is clearly going to lose? I don't know if those are the right terms or not, winning and
I don't know
losing.
about winning and losing, but there are
Right.
some that are certainly a zero-sum game for sure. I mean, the community path is a perfect example. I mean, it either had to be on the north side of the tracks or the south side of the tracks, and at some point, some people wanted it on one side, some people wanted it on the other, and it has to go somewhere. So we had to say no to the people who wanted it on the south side. We voted. We had a plan that went on both sides, and then when that didn't work, it went on the south side, and then we analyzed that, and when that didn't work, it went back to the north side. But we actually analyzed thoroughly all of the routes because people were so, passionate about which side it would be on. But we ultimately chose the north side of the route on the Channing Road side of the tracks behind the high school after analyzing that was the best place to go. I think we're a fairly data-driven group of people. But yeah, sometimes you can't do it both ways. It either has to go here or it has to go there. It can't go both places.
Well, and it seems like there are times that people, when you as a decision maker disagree with someone, they say, "You're not listening to me." How do you respond to somebody when they say that? I'm listening to you and I'm reaching a different conclusion.
Yeah, I've said that very thing. But I think I definitely listen to people. I think what you saw with the rink, the new skating rink RFP process, that we most definitely listened to people because we had an RFP process where we were going to go out with something that was more general and put it out there and get responses. And we had a public meeting at the Beach Street Center, and there were a lot of people who had suggestions. You should make it more detailed. You should put provisions like this or that. And we went back, and you should change the timeline because you're trying to get to this special town meeting, and you really should wait till the annual town meeting. And we thought, you're absolutely right. A, there's really no rush. We could do it later. And B, your ideas are good ideas. We should actually do it. So we redid the entire RFP based on the public comment. On the other hand, I've also had people say to me after meetings, I disagreed with your outcome, but I appreciate the fact that you clearly heard what I was saying and you listened to it and you made a different decision, but it was made in a logical manner, and that's all I can ask for. I mean, you're not going to agree with everyone all the time. I don't agree with my wife on everything all the time. It doesn't mean I don't love her. It's just that sometimes people come to different conclusions with the same facts. It doesn't make someone right or wrong. It's just the outcome that you have.
Uh-huh. So, you talk about agreeing and disagreeing with opinions that come before the board. This board has been seen as a very collegial board, with doing a very businesslike rather than past boards that may have had a lot of personalities. Tell me about your relationship with the other board members.
No, I think it's been a good one. I mean, obviously, I've been on the board with Tom Caputo for 2 years. I was vice chair of the warrant committee when Roy Epstein was chair of the warrant committee, and we served on that together for a very long time. So it's not like these are new people to me. Mm-hmm. And it was having Mark Polillo on the board. I mean, I've had the entire board turn over in my 3 years. So I started with Jim Williams and Mark Polillo, and I'm now with Tom Caputo and Roy Epstein. But I think I've always gotten along with people, and I think even when we've had different makeups of the board and we've had contentious issues, we don't hold that inside and hate each other at the end of the day. I think we have a dispute, you have an argument, you have a vote. Sometimes you win the vote, sometimes you lose the vote. You move on to the next issue, and we have to deal with each other, and I think we do deal with each other in a really good way. We're very data driven. You may have noticed not a lot of egos on the board. We're not very ideologically driven. I think that we look at the data, we make the best decision for the town, we hear the public comments, we take them to heart, we make a decision, and we go to the next issue. I think things are being run really, really well.
Let's pursue that a little with what I think is the issue presented to the town right now, which is the budget. People just got hit with the tax bill for the first half of the high school and middle school, and yet we're looking at a potential operating override vote this coming November. What do you say to people, or how do you justify that operating override vote?
Well, I mean, we don't have the number, and the Financial Task Force 2 is working on that to come up with a number and to see what that would be. But we've certainly been able to get that 2015 override into 6 years, where we thought it would be 3, maybe 4. When I was first running in 2017, I thought we would have an override during my term. I'm going to go an entire term, we've managed to stretch this without an override at all, which I think, while keeping our AAA bond rating, and we got our AAA bond rating not just by one rating agency, we now have it by 2 rating agencies. So I think which has saved us, $5 million on the high school borrowing? That's pretty good. We've been doing pretty well. Obviously, we're not magicians. I mean, this doesn't, at some point, you can't go on forever on the 2015 override. It was never designed for that. So putting the override on in the November 2020 presidential ballot, I think we'll get a very good turnout, and we'll have a decision from the people whether what they want to do. We will, I think, tell people what you get with the override and what you would lose without it, so people can make an informed decision, but ultimately it's the people's decision. But there's not like any free money out there at this point. We've been very stretched, very thin, and we've done a very good job managing the budget to get it to 6 years, but it just isn't going to go any further than that.
And the odds of there being an override vote in November are 100% at this point?
I mean, the task force 2 hasn't come back, but looking at the budget, I don't see any way around it. Now, what the number would be, I can't say.
Yes, I understand
and
that.
obviously, people voted for the high school, so, I mean, that was a good turnout in that election with an overwhelming positive vote. I think everyone knew that money was coming. They didn't exactly expect it to hit as it did, but, it was voted by the people. It wasn't a decision of the select board to put that on there.
And what do you tell people who say, I can't afford to pay my current taxes, and yet I have the second half of the high school and middle school coming and a possible override? What's the answer to that? I don't know if there is an answer.
Well, it depends on the situation. I mean, obviously, if they're seniors, we have passed changes to make it easier for seniors. I passed the thing to lower the interest rate on the senior tax deferral program. So if seniors wanted to defer their taxes till they sell the house or until they passed away, we lowered that interest rate down to 4.5%, which is competitive. They should definitely look into qualifying for that program. We also increased the tax work-off, where seniors can work for the town and we increased that to $1,500, where they can work off part of their tax bill by volunteering for the town, which is a win-win for the town and for them. So there are things that we have done within the extent that we can. And if people feel that their house is improperly assessed, we've told people to file for abatements. If the assessors made a mistake, I'm sure that will be investigated. That deadline's now come and gone for this year, but other than that, I mean, it costs money to run a town. I think some of the tax bill are past debt exclusions, which the voters approved for Wellington or for the Underwood Pool, for instance. These aren't decisions that were imposed upon people. These are decisions that we as a community made.
And there are people who say, well, we should cut expenses rather than trying to increase revenue. Are there expenses or expense categories that are subject to being cut?
Well, we've been doing that to keep the override stretched. I mean, if you look at the budget going forward for next year, which will be the 6th year of the override, there are some things that are being deferred on capital that we wouldn't like to defer, but we're going to defer them for 1 year, and then we're going to make them up if the override passes. At this point, we're getting down to the point where you're really talking about people if you're going to make cuts. It's easy enough. You can defer.
What do you mean? I'm sorry. What do you mean by that?
You can defer a 1 year to buy a new police car. You can't defer a police officer, because if you lay them off, they're going to get another job. They're not going to sit around for a year and hope you bring them back. So once we get to the point where we've taken care of all of the stuff, the physical stuff we have, and you can defer or cut that, at some point all you're really left with is humans, and that's a very difficult thing to cut because they don't come back, and we don't want to do that.
Let's talk a little bit about how the current makeup of the town. Belmont has a median price for homes about $1.1 million. That certainly changes the population. This is no longer a town which, when I first got here in the early 90s, was a large percentage of what you would call townies. A lot of people who were from the middle class, who could afford to live here, and have been here for some families for many generations. That's no longer the case. So how does Belmont, what is Belmont like right now? I mean, is it a rich town?
I think there's a deceptive thinking that that's the case, but obviously walking around as I have campaigning in all the different precincts over the years, there is a lot of discrepancy between income levels, education levels. There are a lot of people, and when you walk through certain parts of town that you might as well be in another town sometimes. You feel like, as opposed to walking to the hill it doesn't seem like it's the same town. So there is a lot of difference and a lot of diversity here in town. But yeah, I mean, this is a problem that's a regional problem. I mean, obviously, anywhere inside 128, you're seeing issues with housing prices and displacement, which we don't want to happen. Obviously, it's good that people want to be here. I don't want to be one of the towns out in Western Mass that's just depopulated and they don't have kids in the schools and everybody's running away. It's good that we are being successful in what we're doing and people recognize it and want to be here. On the other hand, we're not trying to do the right thing to have everybody here be forced out. That is not the intent. And that's why, doing things on affordable housing, passing the housing production plan that we drafted, which when I got elected had been bottled up at the planning board, but we got that through the planning board and the select board and the state, and implementing that, and some of the tax relief for seniors that I described earlier. I mean, there are things we can do. What we cannot do is obviously change the greater Boston economy and housing prices. There's some things we can control and some things we cannot. But we're certainly trying, and we definitely I understand the problem.
Now there is a movement. There is a proposed development over at the McLean Hospital, 144 units. Many of those will be affordable for medium income people with medium income. How much more can we do besides that, or is that going to be the pinnacle of affordable housing? Can we do anything else?
Well, I hope it's not the pinnacle. I mean, obviously, we'd like to get to the 10% minimum to be not subject to 40B, so we can control the development.
And 40B is what?
Is the statute that allows if the town doesn't have up to a certain percentage, I think it's 10% of affordable housing in the town, that a developer can bypass the zoning rules and build something as long as they have a significant affordable.
Like Royal Belmont.
And Royal Belmont's an example where the Silver Maple Forest was torn down and the development put up against Belmont's wishes because we couldn't stop them because we didn't have enough affordable housing and they could do that development via 40B. We would like, and I'm not saying we would say no to development, but it would be nice to be able to control the development through our zoning bylaw. But right now, we're not subject to that. So something like when the Bradford comes online in Cushing Square, if the McLean went through, and we'll see how that plays itself out, because the McLean developers came to us and we told them basically no about a year ago, and they came because we didn't feel there's enough affordable housing, and they came back with the affordable housing basically we were asking for.
And there are other spaces. There's South Pleasant Street.
Yep, that was rezoned by town meeting not that long ago to do some assisted living and some other development down there. So there are opportunities. I mean, obviously Belmont is pretty developed. We don't have a ton of land to build on. So there's a limit to how much we can do.
I'd like to extend that question just a tiny bit. So not looking at affordable housing as such, but looking at housing for seniors. And having hit the 66 age, I'm conscious of that. There will come a time when Ann and I will say we either have to downsize or we want to downsize. Does Belmont have housing for people to stay in town?
Not enough, and that's part of the McLean development as well, is there will be some housing for over 55 as part of that development. And then, as I said, we did do the assisted living zoning overlay for South Pleasant Street. Nobody's developed it, but there has been some discussion, I think, with people kicking the tires on it. So that's the goal, is to get some more of that, because, again, we don't want people who've spent decades here forced out. That isn't the point. The point is to keep everybody here.
And Belmont has become an age-friendly community.
We did, yes.
Can you tell us what that meant?
Yeah, it's a designation, I guess, through the World Health Organization and through AARP, where we applied, and I worked with Nava Navogel, the Council on Aging, to get an application in when I was chair of the Select Board. And then we got designated as an age-friendly community, which requires us to come up with an age-friendly advisory committee, which we recently appointed. Then they have to come up with an age-friendly implementation plan, which the committee is currently working on, to address issues, because this is not just about housing, it's about health, it's about recreation, everything. I mean, obviously seniors have unique needs across the board. And the idea is to sort of have a place where all of that can be sort of a clearinghouse, I think, and to have rules in place, which I'm looking forward to. We got a plaque from them about being a designated and age-friendly community, which I think is down at the Beach Street Center somewhere. And I think it's great to be recognized for that, because we are age-friendly, and now we are officially age-friendly, but that doesn't mean we stop here. We have to now create the plan and implement it.
And I'd like to come back to McLean for a minute too, because there is a need for affordable housing, but there are folks, it seems like a lot of what we are talking about fit together. There are folks who said, well, I just got the first half of my tax bill for the new high school and middle school, and I was told that I needed to vote for that because we needed additional school space, and now you're building more housing and bringing more kids in?
Well, we don't know the answer to that. I mean, one of the things that we've done with this McLean development is the select board voted a month or so ago to have a demographic study done of the project. And as we're using the same demographer who was used for the high school, middle school project, and actually the prognostications they had made back then actually were spot on as time has gone on. So we have a very high degree of confidence in their methodology. And we're having them come, and we're going to be getting that answer prior to town meeting. Because this is going to ultimately, the McLean property is going to be a town meeting vote, because the zoning has to change, and that's a 2/3 town meeting vote. And our contract with McLean will have to change because this is slightly different than what was approved 20 years ago. So ultimately, this isn't not a select board decision. We're going to get and the planning board is working on it right now and having hearings. We're going to get the best deal we can and bring it to town meeting, and town meeting will approve it or town meeting won't approve it, but they need to know, and they will know by town meeting, what if this will bring in children and how many children, and run the numbers on, will this cost the town money or will this make the town money? Because we're not going to just allow development in McLean just to allow development in McLean if it doesn't work for Belmont. That's not what we're trying to do here.
Well, and I've heard people also, one of the big issues in town, of course, is traffic. And people have responded to the McLean development by saying Mill Street is packed, Pleasant Street is jammed, and we're putting another 140 units of housing up there.
And this is also, a traffic study is also being done as part of this. We anticipated these issues. Again, we're not just going to allow this development just to allow the development. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. However, right now McLean has a shuttle service, and where the developer has said that they would be interested in working with McLean to expand the shuttle service to maybe Alewife and Waverly Station so that people don't have to drive in the cars. And we'll do a study and see what the traffic implications would be. Obviously, if it's going to be a non-starter, it's a non-starter, but we'll have to find out what the data is. And again, we'll have all of that for town meeting prior to them making the decision.
So we've been talking about Belmont as a town of homes. Talk a little bit about business and how to make Belmont a business-friendly community. One of the issues we always hear about our tax rate is that Belmont is in the mid 90% residential housing. We have very limited commercial, very limited retail. How do you promote this? It's been talked about for years and years. And, there's been that pushback also from businesses who say that it's not the friendliest town to try to have a business in.
And this is one of the things I ran on, and one of the things I've implemented in the last 3 years is we created a business study committee made up of business folks from around the town, specifically designated areas. And we had them meet. We gave them a 6-month charge to come up with ideas on how to make Belmont more business friendly. They actually took a year because the town administrator, Patrice Garvin, was able to get a state grant to get a staff person to help them with their work. And so they produced then a very large report to us on steps we can take to be more business friendly and to have more of a dialogue with the business community. And one of those was to create a permanent economic development committee, because that business study committee was just supposed to be temporary, do the study, and then they disbanded. And so we have created this new economic development committee, and we are seeking applicants for that. We've received some, and we are still looking to populate it. And then that committee's job will be to implement the findings from the study committee's report. So that is something that is actually actively going on right now.
What type of business can be attracted to Belmont?
Well, I mean, it depends on the economy and the timing and who you talk to. 20 years ago, we thought McLean would be a magnet for R&D, and that was back when a lot of the Kendall Square type of companies were moving out to the suburbs. That is no longer the case, and they're all moving back into Kendall Square. So, and you see in Somerville and other places, Assembly Square and all, where they want to be located, or the Seaport downtown. So the R&D market for areas like us, we've been told, really isn't there anymore. So that's something that, so you have to sort of roll with the market. Now, I think we've done what we can to bring in restaurants by having the liquor licenses and such, which has been successful. And we will keep trying to attract businesses. I think Cushing Square, once the Bradford development is done, and people are living in those units, I think you're going to see a big spike in demand for Cushing Square. If we can continue, if we get the path going, the community path, which will then go from Cambridge to Belmont Center to Waverly Square and to Waltham so that people can connect there, that they'll have more people going to Waverly Square and to Belmont Center. Obviously, we work with the state and the MBTA to make sure the rail is more reliable, and if more people can get them on the path and get them on the train and get them on the bus, it's all better for business.
I'd like to ask one last question. We're running a little short on time. Traffic. People in Belmont are concerned about traffic. Is there anything that can be done? Sometimes it seems like the only response is, it is what it is, and there's not much we can do about it. Can you?
I don't subscribe to that statement.
Okay.
At all.
Can you respond?
Absolutely. We created one of the things that Jim Williams and I did in my first year on there was create do the townwide traffic study to find out where is this all coming from. And some of it is what you think, and some of it is not at all what we thought was happening. Most of it is cut through, that much we did know, but the question is from where and to where and how is it going. So what we've done the townwide traffic study and gotten those results, we then came up with that, with the Transportation Advisory Committee spent a year coming up with a traffic calming policy, which will then, the idea for that is to route the traffic to where it's supposed to be and get it out of the neighborhoods where it is not supposed to be, and to make it slow down and be safer. So by finding out where it's coming from and then coming up with techniques to keep it funneled into areas where we want it to be, and then by building the community path in a way to give people a way to get around without having to drive, and putting part of that is the tunnel under the train tracks at the high school at Alexander Ave, so that people over in the Winbrook area don't have to walk all the way around, or in this case, drive all the way around to get to any of the library, the pool, the rink, the post office, the high school, etc. I mean, I think all of these things can be done to help the traffic. Now, keep in mind, it's a regional problem. And we can't
It being traffic. Traffic is a regional
And
problem.
we can't put up a gate at Belmont and say cut through traffic, can't come through. But there are certain ways we certainly can control it, and I think we're on the path to doing that.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. Do you have anything?
No, not really. I think we've been pretty comprehensive. Maybe if there was this one last question is, we did talk a little bit about the budget. Is there any other, maybe very quickly, you can discuss any other leading issues that the board is going to be taking up?
Well, obviously the library is always hanging out there as a project that needs to be done. The rink RFP is currently out there. We've had some interest, but the applications are not due yet, so we will see what the response is to build a new skating rink on this public-private partnership idea and whether that works or not. Those are two things coming up. Obviously, the override and the whatever that number may be coming from the financial task force. Those are all issues you're going to be seeing coming up in the future.
That's great. Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Adam Dash, candidate for re-election for the Belmont Select Board. I've been joined by Franklin Tucker, who is the editor and publisher of the Belmontonian, Belmont's online source for hyperlocal news. This has been a special edition of the Belmont Journal. I'm your host, Roger Colton. I will see you again next time.